Hello, everyone. Welcome to season 2 of the Intel with Greg Cosell on Inside the Birds. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside Adam Caplan, and we are excited to bring back, we call him the Tape Father, Greg Cosell, NFL film senior producer. He's the host of ESPN's NFL matchup show, and of course, he's a major part of Inside the Birds pregame live as well. Greg, how you doing?
Well, now, Geoff, I'm the tape grandfather, as it were.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's true. All right. Well, we'll try to. It doesn't sound as catchy as Tape
No,
Father,
it
but
doesn't.
we'll see what we can do on
But
that.
I'm doing great. I've started, obviously, been grinding away as well, watching college guys. And that's moving along. I think I'm ahead of the game this year.
That's great. That's great. I know our readers, our listeners, our viewers will be very excited. We do have readers on InsideTheBirds.com as well. And just so everyone knows, today we start a 10-part weekly series. We're going to start it. The first 4 weeks are going to focus on free agency. And then after that, we'll transition to the draft. The last 6 weeks will focus on the NFL draft. And of course, we will get all of Greg's tape breakdowns at positions that we know the Eagles and other teams are going to be very interested in. This first episode, we're going to discuss cornerbacks, free agent cornerbacks. And Greg, we know that the Eagles have a decision to make with James Bradberry. He was a second-team All-Pro. He came here on a 1-year deal after the Giants released him. Now, Bradberry, Greg, I don't know if you know this, has already said he's done his exit interview with the media, and he said he's not playing next year for cheap. He's looking for a market deal for who he is and what he's done. But interestingly, here's what I want to get to you with this before we even get to the tape, because he's kind of been target practice the last few weeks for Eagles opponents who are bitter about losing, but they always felt, based on their comments, that Bradberry was the guy they thought they could get, which is interesting because the guy had a pretty good year and made second-team All-Pro. So let's go to the tape. What kind of year did James Bradberry have based on your observations?
I thought he had a really good season. I think with corners, because they're so visible, and particularly if you do play a lot of single high safety, and certainly the Eagles played a fair amount of that, then there are times where corners obviously get attacked and they're going to give up plays. But I thought, look, let's talk about the traits. Ultimately, that's what you're talking about, because that's how teams do it, guys, as you know. They look for traits and how a player was used. And obviously the Eagles know full well how James Bradberry was used. I mean, he can play press man. He's got length to close throwing windows. He's a really good zone defender. He's got really good vision, reading what we call the triangle, reading through the receiver into the backfield to see the quarterback. He's got ball skills. You wouldn't say he's fast. That's probably the one thing in his game that people will look at, his declining speed. The question is, and I know he wants to get paid, the question is, do 30-year-old corners get long-term contracts? Adam, you would know that better than I. But James Bradberry had a very good season. The big question is now, I've tried to follow all the coaching changes. Have the Eagles they've not made a defensive coordinator move yet, correct?
As of this recording, they are still talking with defensive coordinator candidates and have not named one officially.
So here's the issue. The issue is, if they stay in-house and let's say hire Walker, the DB coach, then I would imagine the defense would stay somewhat similar. If they go outside and hire someone like Vance Joseph, who has an excellent reputation in the league, as you guys both know, then there might be some changes in approach. But Bradberry, to me, as a veteran, he could fit anywhere. He could fit in any system, any approach. I think you can line up and play with James Bradberry and feel pretty good about it. The issue becomes the nature of the contract. If he feels he has one more shot at the rainbow here, I don't know if the league will feel that way. Like I said, 30-year-old corners don't get three. Adam, feel free to jump in. They normally get 3- and 4-year deals at big money.
Here's my question on that, Greg. We know the Giants, with Wink Martindale coming in last year, they were going to move on from. They tried to trade him to the Texans, which we know Lovey played mostly his own defense. And you just mentioned here, the Eagles mixture of zone and man, he did a good job.
He did a good job.
So could he play in a high degree of a man system, you think, going forward?
I would say that he's a better zone player than he is a man player. Okay. And that would be the reason, I'm sure, that the Giants, once they hired Wink Martindale, felt that he was expendable. Really good player, smart, savvy, aware, can play press, no question. He did it this year. We saw it. but I think he's a better zone corner. I think he's really, really good at navigating the gray areas in zone. He plays with his eyes exceptionally well. He's got really good length. Don't forget, he came into this league with Carolina when Sean McDermott was the DC there, and they played a ton of zone. Sean played a ton of cover 4 back in those days with Carolina, and that's how Bradberry cut his teeth in this league, and he became a really, really good zone corner. So he's better at that than man, and the concern with man, Adam, particularly if you want to play press, would be his long speed. That has declined.
All right, so moving on to other players, and
well,
one
real
of my,
quick, Adam, I'm sorry. I
Go
don't want just to answer Greg's question and sort of put this in discussion of finances, right? Last year, Darius Williams signed. He was 8 years old, which is what James Bradberry is now, and regarded as a good corner. And he signed a 3-year, $30 million deal to about 10 a year. And if you look at some of the contracts that were signed, I mean, J.C. Jackson obviously made $17 million a year. He was young. He was an
He's
all-pro.
also younger, yes.
But the market appears to be, based on last year, Dante Jackson, 11 a year, somewhere between 10 and $13 million for a guy who's his age and coming off second team all-pro season. So that's a decent amount of money. And again, you never know if there's a Jaguars-like team out there that's just going to throw a bunch of money out there, but it's going to be a significant upgrade from the 7.25 that I believe he made this year.
Yeah, and he upsided 10. But the thing on those other guys is it's a situation just like Bradberry, they got to free agency. And Geoff, as you said, you never really know what a team's willing to pay. I don't see 10 million from an Eagles standpoint being a problem. And it's not as though they have anybody else that's really ready to step in. Zach McPherson, I mean, I know he doesn't really play much. He's more a special teamer, but he hasn't given anyone the confidence that he's ready to be a starting corner. Not yet. Correct. So you would think they'll try to bring him back. But as you said, if he wants, because remember the cap's going up significantly this season because of the TV money coming in. Big TV money starts at 23. But he wants 13 to 15 million. I can't see the Eagles doing that.
Right. Obviously, you have to watch out for a team like Arizona, right, which may be looking to spend money and now has Jonathan Gannon as their head coach.
And again, I don't know who you were going to talk about next, but Byron Murphy's a free agent.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I don't know if you want to go to him next.
He's on our list. Yeah.
Because ultimately Byron Murphy is a player too. I don't know what Jonathan Gannon thinks of him, but I don't know if obviously it's a new staff there. It's a brand new personnel department with is it Monty Osiford, I believe they brought in as the GM.
Yes.
So I mean, someone like Byron Murphy, we have no idea what the new group thinks of someone like Byron Murphy, who I think's been a pretty solid player in his career.
Do you see him as an inside and outside corner nickel? How do you see him?
I think ultimately, look, he played outside. They had, as you guys know, so many injuries at the corner position this year. And they played him outside in base and inside in nickel when he was healthy. I think ultimately he's probably a nickel player. Now, keep in mind, he's only going to be 25 years old. This kid, he's a young player. Again, we never know what guys are asking for. Adam, I don't know if you know who his agent is. Murphy might be feeling that, hey, I'm going to be 25. This is my shot here. I want big, big numbers, along the lines, Geoff, you were just speaking of high end for what corners are getting. And he's, like I said, only going to be 25. I personally view him as better as a slot player. It would all depend on how teams see him. Obviously the Eagles are set at the slot corner position. Maddox signed a contract a year or so ago. If the Eagles were interested in Murphy, it would be because they would see him as an outside corner, not as a slot corner. And he has played outside. I just personally believe he's better and his traits play better inside.
Interesting.
Greg, we know last year that J.C. Jackson and Charvarius Ward got pretty good deals, younger corners. J.C. Jackson getting the biggest one. Is there any name this year that jumps out to you as someone that you think has the similar tape or is skilled enough, whether it's a Sean Murphy-Bunting, a Cam Sutton, anyone else, Rock Ya-Sin? I mean, it seems like
not at that level. No.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like this is more like of a B or C level free agency for cornerbacks.
Yeah, not at that level. I mean, even someone like Cam Sutton, who's, he's going to be 28. It seems like he hasn't been in the league that long, but he's going to be 28. He came out in 2017. I mean, I think he's another guy that plays inside and outside. He's scheme versatile. He played a lot outside for Pittsburgh, another team that had issues at corner this year with injury. I think he can play both man and zone. I think I wouldn't, again, pure speed would be viewed as an issue. Every team can decide how they value that trait. We know at the combine, everybody gets excited. Corners run faster and faster now, and people certainly get excited because we see corners now run, 4.34, 4.31. Everybody gets excited by that. Sutton's not that guy, but he can play outside. He can play in the slot. He's feisty, he's competitive, he's aggressive. He's a solid player. But to answer the question about is there that one guy this year like a J.C. Jackson, even a Charvarius Ward, whose tape I really liked when he played for the Chiefs. I thought that was a really good signing by the Niners. He was kind of an overlooked player by national media, but I thought he was a really good corner.
Yeah.
I don't think there's that guy in this corner class, Geoff. There's solid players, but not that guy.
One guy I think could be a sleeper for free agency, Greg. I know you've liked this guy over the years. He's kind of worked his way up the depth chart for the Bucs. Is Jamel Dean, Greg? What do you think of him, and how does he fit in?
Jamel Dean is a really interesting guy, and I think he's going to be in demand for a number of reasons. First of all, he's young. He's only going to be 26. Second of all, he's long and he can run. Now, he's had up and down moments, but again, you're dealing with traits. He's got the length. He's got the top end speed. He can disrupt throwing windows in zone. He can certainly match down the field because of his speed in man coverage. I think he fits really well if you're going to play single high safety, whether he's playing man or whether it's zone, as an outside third defender. He's probably the corner that is going to draw the most interest given his age and his traits. So he's been up and down. He's been erratic at times. Double moves have gotten him over the last couple of years. But if you start with traits and attributes, and he looks the part.
And his teammate Sean Murphy-Bunting started his career out great, and then it kind of fell down the depth chart. What's happened?
He's been hurt a lot. I loved him coming out of college.
Yeah,
loved him coming out. He was obviously not a Power 5 guy. Another guy that can play inside or outside has done that a lot with Tampa. He's just been hurt a lot. And you have to be leery of that. You get caught up in, hey, he's not going to be hurt if we sign him. You don't know that. He's been hurt a lot, unfortunately. To me, he would be in the eye of the beholder, Adam, as far as whether to see him inside or outside. Again, we're talking about the Eagles predominantly here, obviously. They're not looking for a slot corner. So anybody they sign would play on the outside. And I mentioned Dean. Keep in mind that he played right corner predominantly for the Bucs, with Davis playing left corner, and Slade predominantly plays left corner for the Eagles. So Dean theoretically would be a really good fit because he's played right corner. But I think, Geoff, to speak, you follow more than I do the numbers. He would be at the highest end, I think, of what a corner is going to get this year.
Sure. Let me ask you again about those two guys, Dean and Bunting, who play in such a blitz heavy system under Todd Bowles, right?
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
Heavy, but not super heavy man.
Gotcha.
That's the thing. Everybody thinks blitz, man.
Yeah.
Todd Bowles is phenomenal with his use of zone principles when he blitzes. So it's not automatic man. They do play man. I don't want to have people think they don't, but it's not the automatic. It's not like Wink Martindale, blitz man.
Right. Yeah. No, I just wonder though, if they transition to different schemes that aren't as blitz heavy and maybe get a little more protection, even though they were in zone a decent amount. If sometimes that helps guys, they go to a different place. It's not as aggressive. They get a little more safety help at times, or a little more off coverage at times if they can. And if that really accentuates what they do best.
Yeah. Dean strikes me as a guy, again, I don't want to say that a change of scenery will make him better, because I think Todd Bowles is a really, really good coach, one of the better ones in the league for sure. But I think Dean has major traits. And in other words, traits that suggest that if he reached his ceiling, he could be a really, really good corner. And that's why I think he's going to be at the top end when it comes to the money situation.
So staying on the cornerback theme, there are a couple of veterans who are probably near the end of their career, and one of them is a guy that might be Hall of Famer someday. It's Patrick Peterson, Greg. How does he look lately for you?
Yeah, I think Peterson is probably one of those guys, if you really want him, he's a one-year deal guy. Last year, it's really interesting how things work out. early in the season, I read a quote by Patrick Peterson saying how much he loved Ed Donatell's defense. And then, of course, later in the season, he didn't seem to feel that way. And again, I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but,
Yeah.
I don't think Peterson is the same player he was. I think that he's clearly had a decline just in his physical and athletic traits, which for his first 7-8 years in the league were high level. Don't forget, this guy's 6'2", 220. So, I don't think he's that guy anymore. I think you can still play him man and zone. Obviously played a ton of zone with Ed Donatel. I just don't think he's at that level of player. And he would strike me at this point in his career, as a 1-year guy, if you felt like, hey, we need someone to plug in.
So let's put that in an Eagles context. If they're not able to retain James Bradberry,
Right.
but want a 1-year guy because they're going to draft someone and they're not
Yep.
sure yet, and let's also, for the sake of this conversation, assume that whoever the defensive coordinator is sort of plays a similar style to Gannon, a lot of quarters, some man match, things like
Right.
that. Would Peterson be a better option than they had, say, 2 years ago when they had Steven Nelson, or do you think at this point it's a little bit of the same?
I think he'd be a better option than Steven Nelson, but I think, yeah, he'd be a better option.
Okay.
I mean, don't forget, Peterson still has length. He's 6'2". He still has great awareness. He's got really good ball skills. He's always had really good ball skills. I mean, he's really savvy. Just think back to the interception he made against Josh Allen to end that game when he understood the route concept. And even Josh Allen said, hey, Patrick beat me on that play. He read the whole thing and he saw it. That's what a Patrick Peterson brings to the table. Incredibly smart, from everything I understand, a great teammate. He's one of those guys. He just does not have the same explosive traits that he had, because when he came out, I mean, he was one of those guys. And for 6-7 years in Arizona, he was one of those guys.
How about Eli Apple, Greg? He's he's been beat up his entire career,
been starting.
He still finds himself starting
Yeah.
for teams that are in the playoffs here. He'll be a free agent. What do you see in Eli Apple?
From Eastern High School in Voorhees, New Jersey.
From Eastern High in Voorhees. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
When he was Eli Woodard, by the way. Yeah, he changed his name to Eli Apple.
Did not know that.
Yeah. See, you'll learn a lot of meaningless stuff.
Who knew? Who knew?
But he's another traits guy. Look, he's over the years, he's been beat. We've seen him get beat numerous times. We've seen him commit bad penalties. But he was a top 10 pick, I believe, was he?
Yeah.
12 pick.
Top 10, 16. Yeah.
There you go. I mean, the guy's got traits. He's long, he's athletic, he can run. Everywhere he goes, guys, he starts. And you can say whatever you want that, hey, he gets beat once in a while. It's the nature of the NFL. The ball gets thrown a lot. I don't know enough about, teams do, in doing their due diligence about the person, obviously, the whole thing with his mom over the years and all. I mean, who knows? We just talking about the player, he's another guy with traits, and he's also not that old. When did he come out, Adam?
2016. Yeah. He's just 28 in August. Wow.
That's shocking.
So, I mean, he always gets, he's always going to get a job, because long, athletic corners who can run don't fall out of the sky. So he's always going to get an opportunity.
Yeah, it's his 5th team. It's incredible. It's been 5 teams so far.
Speaking of, shocking, I'm almost surprised that this guy's only 30, and that's Marcus Peters. I believe he's also going to be a free agent. I know he came back kind of a little slow because he had the ACL injury, had to come back, but is he still, again, if the Eagles lose Bradberry and they're looking for a 1-year guy, is Marcus Peters good for that?
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Peters is, he's super competitive. At times, as we've seen over the years, can go overboard, but super competitive. He's also played a little safety in his career at times over the last number of years. Although no, it might have been Jimmy Smith who did.
Jimmy Smith.
Yeah,
right.
Jimmy Smith did. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
But Peters is an outside corner. He's been a really good player. He's got great ball skills, as we've seen through the years. Obviously, in his career, has played a ton of man because Wink Martindale was there. Far less man this year because there was a total change in the Ravens defense. McDonald came in. He had been there prior, then went to the University of Michigan for 1 year, and they brought him back. that's why they let Wink Martindale go, because they didn't want to lose McDonald to another team, and they really like him as a young defensive coach. But this was a major change. The Ravens did not, they were among the lowest percentage cover one teams in the league this year, after with Wink Martindale being among the highest for years.
Wow.
So you're dealing with Peters, who was a major man-to-man coverage player. And then this year, even though he missed some games, did not play anywhere near the amount of man coverage as he had in the past.
That is surprising. But at 30, he still has something left. And they, depending on what they do with Bradberry, they could be in the market for a veteran corner. And then just a couple more guys. There's a kid with Detroit, Amani Oruwayrie, who I know he's been up and down bench.
He got benched this year, yes.
Yeah. He's still a young guy at the end of his first contract. What do you see from him?
I mean, I think another guy that you look at and you think traits, because he's 6'2", 220, doesn't run particularly well, but is big, is physical. The problem is he just got burned so often this year, he got benched. And so you really have to do your due diligence on him. And don't forget, Aaron Glenn in Detroit, they played a ton of man. They blitzed and played man. Now they kind of decreased it a little bit as the year went on, when he realized, hey, we're getting burned too much and we just can't keep doing this. But, that's what he played this year. I think you'd want to really do your due diligence, because you're going to look at him and go, wow, we like what we see, because he is 6'2", he's long. He's not a bad athlete, just doesn't have great speed. But the question is, do you really view him as a starter, and would you feel comfortable signing him and saying he's going to start opposite Slay, no questions asked? Whereas when they signed Bradberry, they clearly knew they could do that.
Greg, I'm going to give you 3 names. I don't want you to evaluate all 3. What I want you to do is pick one. If one jumps out at you and say, hey, I kind of like his tape, or no, I don't like all these 3. Because I don't think any one of these 3 are going to sign huge deals or anything, but they're intriguing to me. One is former Eagle Chandon Sullivan. The other is former Temple standout Rock Ya-Sin, and also former Browns corner Greedy Williams, who I believe was a 2nd-round pick, if I was not mistaken. So of those 3,
I'm gonna talk Greedy Williams. We're gonna leave out Chandon Sullivan, because he's a slot player and he's actually been pretty good at it. But the Eagles are not going to look for a slot corner.
Correct.
Greedy Williams, to me, has always been fascinating, because Greedy Williams came out of LSU, and they get corners, all the time. We know that. Long, athletic. When he came out, or I shouldn't say when he came out, in his first year at LSU, people were talking about him as the next great LSU corner because of the traits. I mean, he really looks the part. It just hasn't worked out. I'm going to be totally honest. I haven't studied him personally in great detail, so I don't want to sit here and say something that's wrong. But, he's a guy that's still really young, because he came out young. And someone is, it could be the Eagles. Someone's good. And by the way, he's not going to get, $14 million a year. We know that. But someone's going to look at this kid and say, we can make this guy into a really, really good corner, because he's long, he's athletic, his ball skills are pretty good. I couldn't speak to his work ethic or his approach or his mentality, any of that. But Geoff, this guy, when he was in that first year at LSU, I mean, people thought this guy would go to the NFL and be an all-pro.
The knock on him has been injury history. He's been on IR 2 of the 4 years, and the build, he's kind of a thinner guy, solidly built. But as you talked about the traits, look, he was a 2nd-round pick. He just never lived up to it. He was not a full-time starter there, so he's kind of a guy. You never know.
Actually, they drafted the kid from Mississippi State this year, Emerson, who clearly beat him out.
Yep. Kind of knew that when I was at training camp with Eagles and Browns, that was probably going to be the case. And with Ward and Emerson and Greg Newsome, he had no chance. So you know what, Greg? I'm glad Geoff brought this up, because this could be a guy gets a change of scenery.
Yep.
She turns 26 this summer. She's still relatively young. Maybe he gets it done with another team. And
maybe a change of scenery with veteran players like a Slay, who knows what it takes to be great in this league. Veteran players because, hey, look, coaching is, I'm a big believer in coaching, and coaching is really important. But when it comes to players, it's the locker room and how they, maybe. And I don't know what, this is no knock on Cleveland. I couldn't begin to tell you one thing about their locker room, but maybe a change of scenery with veterans like that can get this guy to really focus in and play to what his traits are.
Yeah, we know the Eagles are also trait oriented, whether it's size for a position or
Right.
athleticism. So yeah, definitely something interesting to watch.
And keep one thing in mind. I don't know the teams when it comes to free agents, particularly younger free agents like a Greedy Williams, they always go back and look at, because they still have a lot of the same people in the organization. They will always go back and look at their evaluation of him coming out. That's what teams do if it's a younger free agent. So let's say the Eagles really liked his traits. Now, my guess is Greedy Williams probably had some issues that were not on field, and I don't mean to paint him as a bad guy, but whether it was work ethic, whatever. But they'll go back and look at their evaluation of him coming out, and if it was really pretty high, like let's say they said, hey, first round talent, but we're unsure of other things, they might say, hey, we need to talk to him and see, has the kid matured? Has he grown up?
Sure.
Because that's what teams do. They look at how they evaluated a player coming out.
Greg, of all the corners we talked about, I'm curious just about the hierarchy here. I mean, I feel like, does James Bradberry sort of top this list, or are Byron Murphy and Jamel Dean two guys who you like? I mean, are they fairly close as from a talent / impact standpoint?
I would think that Dean would probably be the number one guy, only because he's going to only be 26.
Mm-hmm.
He's got really good traits. Bradberry's going to be 30 entering this season. So, he had a really good season, but again, you're getting into the age. He's going to play somewhere, and obviously, whether a team looks at him and thinks, 2-3 year deal or 1 year deal, that remains to be seen. Mm-hmm. That depends also on Bradberry and his agent. If Bradberry thinks this is, his final shot at the rainbow, and he thinks he's going to get a 3-year, $13 million deal, my guess is that's not going to happen, but I could be wrong. I don't study that the way you guys do. But I think Dean, the fact that he's just going to be 26, and with his traits, I would think he'd be the number one corner, who's a free agent this year.
It's interesting. If you look at the NFC East, the Eagles clearly are the best team, but the one issue comparatively is they have the least amount of depth at corner. The other teams are pretty good shape. The Giants are really good shape if everybody's healthy. Now, Washington, not super deep, but the Eagles simply right now, they can't line up at outside corner because as we mentioned, Bradberry's up. We don't know about McPherson and his future other than being on special teams. Can he kind of fit in? Can he challenge for something? We don't know yet. So, and to me, if they want to get back to where they were,
great point, Adam. That's a great point, because
Jeff, they got to get help.
As you guys know, they have 7 or 8 free agents on defense, and they can't sign all 7 or 8. We know that, so they're going to prioritize 2 or 3. That's what teams have to do. They can't, and unless, because the reality is, guys, unless you're really like someone like Brandon Graham could say, hey, I want to finish my career, I want to play 1 more year, I'll sign the 1 year, whatever. But the point is, Marcus Epps is not going to say, oh, I'm going to take less money than someone else is offering me just because I like living in Philadelphia. He's not going to say that. If he gets an opportunity to get a good number, he's going somewhere else. So the point is, who are they going to prioritize? That's why you bringing up Patrick Peterson was really smart, because they could end up doing the same thing. If Bradberry is talking 3 years, $13 million, and someone's willing to do that, my guess is it wouldn't be the Eagles, right, Adam?
They'd be a little bit rich for me, but we've learned never say never with the stuff. One more thing, Greg, we're not doing the draft stuff now, but just one question on the draft. I don't know if you've done all your cornerback group study.
No, I have not. Corners, I have not done yet.
Okay. Because
but I know that there's 3 or 4 that are on, mock drafts by guys we all respect that are listed, like the Gonzalez kid from Oregon, Cam Smith from South Carolina. I know I'm missing some names.
There's an Illinois corner.
Witherspoon.
Devin Witherspoon. Who a lot of people.
Porter Jr.
From Emmanuel Forbes from either Ole Miss or Mississippi State. I don't want to be wrong there.
Gotcha.
There are corners in this draft that are clearly viewed as first-round players. Mm-hmm. The Eagles could feel that, hey, with pick 10, that's the direction we're going. A lot of people think they're going to go D-line. They could easily go there as well. Because who knows about Fletcher Cox? Who knows about Brandon Graham? I would say at this point in time, there are major questions about Jordan Davis and his ability to play 30, 40, 50 snaps a game. So they could easily go D-line. I think it'd probably be safe to say that at pick 10, Howie's not taking a running back.
Probably not. Probably not. And then I think it would be safe to say, based on this discussion alone, that in about 4 weeks, when we transition to draft preview, this position here, cornerback, based on the names you guys just mentioned, and don't forget Branch from Alabama and Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State, I have a feeling that might be the first draft preview edition
Well, it's funny.
of the Intel with Greg Cosell.
I have done Brian Branch.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian Branch is not a true outside corner, although you might argue he has traits to do that, but that's not how he was used. I think Brian Branch is one of the absolute best players I've watched so far. And I've done a decent amount of the top guys. I haven't done corners yet, so I don't want to say, but Brian Branch is going to be a day one starter in this league for whoever drafts him.
I remember you feeling similarly about the Michigan kid last year, about his ability to play inside, nickel, safety,
Dax
or
Hill
corner,
from
right?
Michigan.
Yeah.
And he was. Hill might be a better pure athlete. I think Branch is a better player.
Gotcha.
And I think that might be why Hill didn't play a lot this year, because I think Hill, first of all, they had two really good safeties. And, they obviously had corners too that were there. So, they were a team that didn't, need him to play unless he was better, and he wasn't. And I remember reading a quote by Lou Anaramo somewhere in the middle of the season that Hill hadn't picked up mentally what he needed to pick up yet. But Branch is an incredibly savvy player. You can just see that watching the tape. Again, I think he'll be a day one starter for whoever drafts him.
All right, Greg, I want to leave you with this because Adam and I have been talking about this guy a little bit. He's a defensive back, cornerback that the Eagles recently brought in, and you may have to go back to your last year's notes a little bit on this guy. I think we talked about him with you. Tristan McCullum, the Eagles signed out of Sam Houston State. Very tall, lengthy guy who has both a corner and safety background. His twin brother is Zion McCullum, who I think.
So I was going to say Zion. I did. Tristan, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're twin brothers. So. All right. I was going to ask if you remembered anything about.
No, Tristan. I don't, because I did the brother because he was a prospect, and he actually
one drafted, one not. Yeah, that's
he played snaps for Tampa this year. He was a long athletic kid run. But Tristan, I don't know anything about, just being so I can't speak to him.
Gotcha. No biggie. It was just a futures contract. He's 6'3", 195, so it just jumped out. He played for I guess if at Sam Houston State, he probably played for Casey Keeler out there.
He played for Casey Keeler, who's been there now for a long time and done very well.
Yes, he has. All right, great stuff on cornerbacks. Next week, we're going to go over free agent safeties and linebackers with Greg. And obviously, the Eagles are facing a predicament there as both their starting safeties and both their two inside linebackers are on expiring contracts. So we'll have a lot to discuss with that. That's going to do it for the first episode, though, of the Intel with Greg Cosell. For Adam Caplan and Greg Cosell, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching The Intel with Greg Cosell.